Chauncey, welcome to the conversation.
Thank
What
you,
a treasure it is to have your presence with us for a bit. Chauncey, we are talking today about the business of change, dealing with change, the great wave of change that is upon us, and how we might prepare ourselves, what moods and what skills and sensibilities we might provoke in ourselves to deal with this change. Um, you've recently published a gorgeous book, Mobilize, on this topic. You're planning on writing several more. I want to hear from you. Take it away, please, and say what comes to you, what provoked in you in response to these questions, and tell us a little bit about the work that you're up to also now.
Thank you. I've been talking this morning to several people who are struggling with various disturbances in their worlds that my wife, for example, has fallen into a depression, not like the one that she fell to for several years, not too long ago, but a nasty depression. And I've begun to think that part of what is going on is something that there are weird things going on that we don't have good ways of talking about. In the world, in the post, well, we're not yet post, but in the pandemic, I read not too long ago about how some extraordinary artists did amazing work during pandemics. Shakespeare, for example, I'm told, wrote a good deal of his work in the midst of pandemics, although he didn't talk about the pandemics very often, but he was in the midst of pandemics as he was writing his poignant work. And I was thinking and talking with one friend in particular this morning about how my friend Fernando Flores talks about emotional fortitude as an emotional state that we need to cultivate, a kind of a mood that we can cultivate, that is a mood for helping us make our way through difficult times. And I was thinking how emotional fortitude works only if we have lots of patience with ourselves and take good care of ourselves. That we have to remember, I have to remember, and we have to remember that my capacity to move in the world that I find myself in depends first and foremost on my my taking care of myself. Being awake to the challenges that I'm facing in the world, and being kind to myself. I find myself often saying to dear friends, please remember to take care of my friend Jeff. Please remember to take care of my friend Saqib. Please remember to take care of my friend Akash. That's a friend of mine, and he or she matters to me, and I want you to listen to my request, Chauncey requests. You take care of this person for me, because part of my future depends upon their being healthy in this moment. I want to. I'm going to go to a very difficult topic for a few minutes, and since I wrote about it in the book, I'll talk about where it appears in the book, and I'll read a little bit from the book with you about it. But the topic is what Heidegger called clearings. The topic is a weird one. It is something about the background in which we live our lives, and something that a phenomenon that shapes many things about how we understand who we are, what we're doing, so on and so forth. I found myself yesterday in a conversation with a friend in Australia he's a consultant. He's a one-man consulting firm, and he's sitting across the table from a guy who is managing a $1 billion project to erect wind farms in Australia. And I said to him, Mark, you think the guy sitting across from you is the gorilla at the table, and you're a mere chimpanzee here facing the gorilla at the table. And I said, you need to let go of that, because if you are in the mood of a chimpanzee, the most you can do is be quicker than he is and be happier than he is, but you're going to be afraid of him in certain ways. And what you need to realize is that because you belong to a network of people that is powerful and big, that really you are the gorilla. He doesn't know what he's up against. Your network is better than his network for what you're trying to do. And you need to offer him help, but you need to offer him help as a peer, not as a subordinate looking up to him, not with the interpretation that you're smaller because you're an individual. The notion that we are all individuals, weak individuals who, as I was thinking about it, that any cat of the big cat families could take care of us with one swipe of their paw, and then might want to take us for dinner at some moment here. But it's not true, because we're not individuals. We think in conversation with each other. We act in conversation with each other. We construct everything that's important in collaboration with each other. We're not, the idea that we are poor, simple, weak individuals is part of the clearing that is an enemy here. So I was thinking about that, and I thought that I would read for a couple minutes here, and then see what kinds of comments or questions I evoke, and if it will work, Saqib, I'd love to take a couple of questions then and
Please.
play with the community here. So I quoted from Seth Godin, who said this. He said, if we give an isolated community access to the internet, very quickly, the quality of life will improve. Time will be saved. Research into proven solutions will produce value, and people will become connected to a larger population. These connections will lead to productivity and learning. And then, soon thereafter, they will become less happy. Not because they're worse off, but because the dominant media narratives that arrive exist to make them feel insufficient, inadequate, or simply jealous at how green the grass is over there. Our narrative defeats our surroundings every time. This is Seth Godin. And what he's talking about is what I call the clearing. So then I quoted Hubert Dreyfus talking about the clearing as Heidegger introduced it to him. He says this: put generally, the shared practices into which we are socialized provide a background understanding of what counts as things, what counts as human beings, and what it makes sense to do, on the basis of which we can direct our actions towards particular things and people. Thus, the understanding of being creates what Heidegger calls a clearing in which things and people can be encountered. Heidegger calls the unnoticed way that the clearing both limits and opens up what can show up and what can be done. He calls it its unobtrusive governance. Its unobtrusive governance. For Heidegger, the history of being in the West has been the history of misunderstandings of the clearing. From the pre-Socratics on, philosophers have sensed that something beyond ordinary being was as responsible for their existence as anything. But since the clearing, like the illumination in a room, must always stay in the background, or as Heidegger puts it, withdraw, to do its job of letting things show up, philosophers since Plato have replaced the clearing with what they considered the highest being, that is the ground of beings and the source of their intelligibility. So the clearing, and there's a little more that I won't read, but he closes with, according to Foucault, power has suffered a parallel misunderstanding. Power has suffered a misunderstanding about what it is. It's a hidden, there's a hidden phenomenon in there. But I think about the clearing, and some of you know that I like to tease about the little animals that we have, little invisible little animals we have sitting on their shoulders, whispering things in our ears. They say things like, "Whoa, listen to that. Will you listen to that? Is this guy stupid or not?" Or it says, "Well, why don't you ask him, if he's so smart, why isn't he rich?" Or ask her, "So you think that, what are your metrics? What is your evidence for that?" These little voices sitting from this voice sitting here. And we think of that as a phenomenon, as part of thinking, but it's not thinking. It's the clearing talking to us and attempting to provide governance for how we pay attention to and think about what we're doing in life. So that's my share for the troubling share. I consider the clearing the big enemy at this moment for anybody who's trying to do some important new things here. So Saqib, how can I get a couple people to ask questions or comment about what I've just said? And
well, I'll just hold a gun to their heads, and that's how
no, please don't. No guns.
I would actually thank you, Chauncey. First of all, what a treasure! Heidegger. I was thinking about this. Heidegger's quote comes to mind. It says, the most thought-provoking thing about our thought-provoking times is that we are still not thinking. And your invitation for us to build moods of solidarity and to build moods in which we are not imagining ourselves left alone in our corners, destitute, those moods can do far more harm,
right,
than the moods that, if we begin to look towards the future and build solidarity, stand up for ourselves, stand up for each other, and see what kind of future we can invent. The future is upon us anyways, but we could find our place to stand in that kind of a future. So lovely message, Chauncey. Thank you very much. I would love to hear the voices of John Tishner or Romy Sala. I haven't heard from both of you for a while. So what questions either of you may have for Chauncey, or what interactions? Would you please give me the pleasure of Romy? What a pleasure it is to see you. Many years. Thank you for being here. What question you may have for Chauncey?
Hi, Saqib. Hi, Chauncey. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here, listening to you, learning from you, sharing with you. And I would like to ask Chauncey about the clearing might be in our way right now during these pandemic times. Um, if I am listening to my own inner voices, how can I open a different conversation so I can um, see or move through the clearing? I don't know if this
No,
makes sense,
it's a
but
lovely question. It's a lovely question, Romy. I don't have any problem with it, and I don't have any difficulty understanding it. The the clearings, it's usually it's not one clearing. I have the guy you see sitting in front of you. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore, Maryland was when I went to elementary school in Baltimore. We were taught that we belonged to the Old South, and you can understand how unsettling that could be as part of my history. I do not think of myself as an Old South worshiping and happy with the slaveholders and with the Civil War, and unhappy that we lost the Civil War, etc. But then I moved to Los Angeles, which is, and I was involved in the community that was connected to Hollywood and actors and producers and directors, and so then I lived in the San Fernando Valley, which is that's where beautiful people got busy trying to be in the movies. And so I have that as one of the clearings in the background. And then I moved from there to Boston, Massachusetts, where I went to Harvard College, which is, that's the oldest and for many years the finest educational institution in the world, really, in some stupid ways. And so I have an elite background. My friend Fernando Flores never ceases to delight in the opportunity to tease me about elitist parts of the elitist parts of the clearing that I belong to. And then for 40 years, I've worked with Fernando Flores. So, and that's another weird one. I'm not going to try and characterize it, but you and a few other people here know what kind of clearing he is. I mean, he was number 2 in the Allende regime when Pinochet took over Chile. And he is my dear friend and colleague for 40 years. So I have a bunch of clearings. Now, what do you do with the clearings that you have? Well, the first thing is to begin to tally the clearings, I have to introduce myself to my clearings. I was in business in Boston. I was in business with a Black man. I was a business partner with a Black man. And I have to listen to what those clearings are, and then I have to begin to sort out which are clearings, because the voices inside me, they never identify themselves as, this is Chauncey speaking now, and I'm actually thinking. No. They're just voices speaking in my head. And then I have to say, what do I want to invent me as being in the world? And that's a mystery. That's not it's not a matter of sorting out the good guys from the bad guys. No, I am a good guy and a bad guy because I have clearings inside me that are, some of them are horrible. I mean, I'm a gringo. And gringo means greens go. It's not a simple, I'm a effing gringo. So then the other thing that is right alongside this in dealing with, so I'm saying it's a wonderful puzzle to invest in, spend time thinking with, and have and do it with friends alongside you, bringing the various backgrounds into the conversation and thinking about what they're teaching us. There was one more thing I wanted to say. Oh, I know that the other thing is we think that we listen to each other by listening to each other's words, but far more important for listening is the listening to how our bodies are listening to each other. So I heard your question, but more than hearing your question, my nervous system listened to your nervous system and said to me, oh, Romy's asking this kind of a question. So then I answered my listening to your question, not your question. And that's very interesting. Our listening is much more than listening to words. Listening to words is, okay, fine, but it's not nearly as important as the way in which our nervous systems listen to each other. So thank you for the question, Romy.
Lovely.
Thank you, Chauncey.
Okay.
Green stay.
Chauncey, John, please.
Sure. Yes, thanks, Chauncey, for sharing that. So one of the things for me that I'm curious about is you've talked about some really pretty extraordinary clearings that you've been a part of. We have a few people here that are on the younger side, maybe just in school and are in their own clearings. What would you say to some of the younger people here of like how to be able to explore the clearings that they're in, the groups that they're in ways to be able to help move their lives in directions that they want to try to explore together, to explore?
Lovely question, John. One of the things I would begin with is to pay devastatingly close attention to the networks that we belong to, that we're predisposed to spend time with, and be listening to the background in which the community that we are spending time in is interpreting what's valuable, what's wasteful, what's real, what's not real, what's important in life. This thing of the clearing is actually, it's very mysterious. I said in the book, and those of you who will read the book, my friend Flores came to me one day and he said to me, I want you to start paying attention to something I call the clearing and blah, 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 blah. I talked for 5 minutes about the clearing. And I said to him, after I'd listened to that, I said to him, I'm going to say the rude version of what I was saying to him. I said this much more politely because he was my boss and a very powerful guy, and I'm careful about how I talk to him. But rudely, what I was saying to him was, I think you're bullshitting me. I don't think there is anything called the clearing. I think that's horseshit that you're inventing to try and make me feel better about how hard it is to do the work that I do. Because you're saying, because he'd finished his talk about the clearing by saying, my work would be much easier if I paid attention to the clearing. I said, you're trying to blow smoke up my ass. You're trying to make me think that there's something that I could study that would make it easier for me to deal with people who are stone cold blind about what I'm trying to get them to do. And it's bloody hard to get people to do things that they don't want to do. And I've spent my life, my adult life, working with people trying to get them to do things that very often they don't want to do. So I said that. And then he said this weird thing to me. He said, well, okay, he said, think about it and watch around you and come back to me in 6 months and tell me what you think. Well, this is not him. He normally would never miss an opportunity to hammer me down. And so a few weeks later, I went back to him and I said, I see it. I see it. There's stuff going on in the background that I had not seen. And so I invite those who are predisposed to take seriously the stuff that I'm talking about to begin to watch the communities around you and watch how there are in the background voices that people are listening to that are saying things to them about what's real, what's not real, what's important, what's not important, how you know, how, where we are good, where we are bad, what's strong, what's weak, et cetera, and see what shows up for you, and do that in a network, in conversation with other people. One of the things that Saqib can tell you all about that I've done for many years, literally for decades, is read out loud in a community with friends. Every Sunday morning, I have an hour's conversation with 10 people, and we're reading out loud to each other and talking about what we're reading. Now, we read difficult books, philosophy books mostly, but mostly we're not, any of us, only one or two of us are really prepared to read philosophy books. The rest of us are novices. But the books are provocative and invite us to begin to think about what's behind, what's underneath the surface. And that's my invitation. Begin to watch what's underneath the surface in your conversations.
Lovely.
How's that work, John?
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Lovely, Chauncey.
So you have other work you need to do, and I have other work that I need to do. Thank you very much for inviting me to spend a few minutes with you. I've gone past my minutes.
Treasure. It's a treasure. It's a total and absolute treasure to have your presence here. It has been my own good fortune to cross paths with you, and still continuing to cross paths with you.
Well, it's more than crossing paths. For those who are here, Saqib, in some moment, he figured out that a piece of software that he admired had been invented or been developed by Chauncey Bell, and he went looking for Chauncey Bell, and he has never let go of me since. So and in some moments he said, could we possibly become partners? And I said yes. And I'm proud of the relationship that we've had for these many years, Saqib. I'm very proud of the relationship. It's a treasure in my life. Thank you for being here.
That Rumi's poem comes to mind. Rumi says that when the thirsty is looking for the ocean is also looking for the thirsty. So such has been relationship between us. Honor and pleasure, Chauncey. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Love to all. Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.